You first. How would you decide? Well, I don't know.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts number 155, which for some reason is no longer showing bent, even though it was earlier. So, sorry?
I swear I'm here.
Yeah, you are. It's very confusing as to why that would be the case. It was working while during setup, but hey, look, there's Ben. We'll take that as a Dapper as a professional anyway, and I'm going to pour some hard Baja Blast, which doesn't show it very well because of the chroma key. As you can tell, I am in fact wearing tutu and a Santa hat, because you know what? It's still old calendar Christmas. So, yeah. So here's the first drink for Dapper's a Professional. Alright. Bent, how are you?
No, I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing alright. It's, my head is kind of warm, though. This is actually a very warm Santa hat. So,
Yes, it is.
yeah, it really is. And yes, this is my horrible, itchy human suit. But, you know, this tutu does not fit on me. It only fits on the human suit. So, you know, it is what it is. Let's see. We do have a super chat goal. I've decided that next week, which isn't even a count with Bent, if we can get 30 teal or higher super chats, is a lot. $5 or more if you're doing US dollars. In the next 1 hour and 56.5 minutes, then I will wear this again for what should be a Matt with Maddie. I have to double check with Maddie, but that's at least the plan. And even if it's not Matt with Maddie, it'll just be some kind of something or other, and I'll wear the tutu for it. So there you go. All right. So we are here for Kent with Bent, primarily where we just take a look at the nonsense that Kent Hovind says, and yeah, we talk about it while we drink, because we got drinking rules. So, Bent, would you like to go over the drinking rules, or should I?
I think you should go over them. You're much more thorough.
All right, so we will take a drink if Kent Hovind says something that's just so stupid, we just kind of have to. We will also take a drink anytime Kent Hovind actually gets something factually correct, but it can't just be something he's quoting from someone else. He actually has to have the information in his brain, and then he has to articulate it with his vocal apparatus. So if he's just like reading out of a textbook and the textbook is right, that doesn't count. We will also take a drink if Kent Hovind makes a joke that doesn't land or tells a story that we're pretty sure didn't happen. That one is a bit of a judgment call, but hey, it's my show. I get to call the drinks. That's just how it works. We will also take a drink anytime Kent Hovind mentions, say, that particular German party that was really popular in like the 30s and 40s, as well as the Mustache Man, who was their leader. We will also take a drink when Kent Hovind cites a source that we then check, and rather than just not supporting his claim, it actively refutes the claim. That's called a Trojan source. We also have one that can only happen once per stream. It's called ad hominid, and it happens when a creationist, in this case Kent, confuses what we can know based on just the Lucy skeleton of Australopithecus afarensis with what we can know about any wider taxon to which that skeleton belongs based on not just that, but also any other finds, right? So, for example, if he's like, oh, well, you know, Lucy wasn't found with feet, so how do we know she was an upright rocker? Why do we reconstruct her with human feet? And the answer is, well, because we have other Australopithecus feet. So, there you go, right? It's sort of like if someone found like a horse skeleton, but it was missing everything below like the femur or the humerus. We're like, well, how come you didn't reconstruct this horse with like dog paws? Well, because I've seen other horses, and this is how they look. So, you know. We'll also take a drink if Bent or I can actually predict what Kent is going to go say next. That's a confirmed prediction. We'll also take a drink if I screw up the, the production of this. So, for instance, if I fail to unmute Bent, or I go to the wrong scene, or I fail to turn off the opening video for this when we switch back from a break or something like that. Then we take a drink for Dapper's a Professional. However, if a piece of software crashes, or the internet cuts out, or YouTube just decides to delete everything, that's not on me. That's not a Dapper's a Professional. So, Roshan Lipstick to Equus Keller, who's been a member for 16 months, says, what if Kent mentions the Foolish Society? That is a great question. That's probably a drink. But you know what? It's a bridge I'm going to cross when I get there. Yeah, I don't... Oh, really good question. Let's see. We will also take a drink. If any of you super chat or membership milestone chat anything to the effect that AIG or Answers in Genesis is a bag of dicks. Now you do have to be clever. You can't just type that in English in the open because YouTube will censor it. However, they don't censor it in many other languages, as well as, various forms of wordplay, which can get around this. You also can cause us to drink by gifting memberships. Every membership gifted will be one drink up to the point where you gift like 30, in which case, no, I'm just going to add that many to the drink counter. Finish my drink, which, wow, I have a transparent drink. That's pretty cool. And then I'll just get another drink. Let's see. We will also take a drink if anyone super chats or membership milestone chats anything with any of the kaiju emojis, which we have just for channel members, which include Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. Also, if either Mothra or Godzilla come by audibly, which might happen, we take a drink for that. What am I missing, Bent?
That's all of them.
All right. Well, that's all of them then. Bent, are you likely to become more prepared than you are now for Kent Hovind?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
All right. Well, first, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
All right, here we go.
So these ice balls are flying around.
He's talking about comets.
Next thing to keep in mind, if you throw a snowball too fast, it'll break apart. You couldn't shoot a snowball out of a cannon. It gets up to a certain...
Okay, but that's not because the snowball goes too fast, Kent. That's because of the acceleration and the temperature. Why does he always get everything wrong? Why? It
is a gift.
I'm gonna take a drink.
It's a gift.
It really is.
Speed, it comes apart. There's a long, complicated reason for this. It has to do with how tightly together are the molecules of water or ice stuck to each other, called the tenacity of the ice. How tightly do they hold on? At a certain speed, they're going to come apart.
No, Kent. At a certain amount of air resistance, they're going to come apart. But if you're floating out in space, there's no air resistance. Speed is relative, right? Speed relative to what? If there were an atmosphere out in space, then sure, maybe there would be a speed limit for comets. I'm not even sure what he's trying to get at.
Next thing to keep in mind.
Okay.
The Earth has a magnetic field.
Yeah.
But the magnetic field is getting weaker. Since it's been measured, the Earth's magnetic field has lost 6%. In 150 years, it has lost 6% of its strength, since a guy named Gauss measured it. Okay? That'd be a good quiz question. The magnetic field is getting weaker. It's lost 6% in 150 years.
Which, by the way, is a minuscule amount of time compared to how long even Kent thinks the magnetic field has been around. Which means that we really shouldn't extrapolate that, because we also don't have any good reason to think that the magnetic field is just like some intrinsic thing that can't vary in either direction, because it's not like it's a fundamental aspect of physics, like the strength of the weak nuclear forces, which is what determines things like the half-lives of radioactive nuclides. Me, old nerdy bastard ONB member for 18 months, says Kent gets everything wrong like it's his job. Oh, wait, with a Godzilla. Thank you very much. And with our first super chat that helps us with the goal, Roshna Lipstick to Equus Keller says, also drink when Kent is so wrong it buggers belief. I mean, yeah, that's the first drink trigger. Yep. All right.
The magnetic field is what causes the northern lights. If you can imagine.
I mean, it's half of what causes the northern lights, right? But, like, it's like saying engines are what allow a plane to fly. It's like, well, yes, but also you need, like, a wing, and you need control surfaces, And like, there's more to it, but yes, you do need the engine.
You ever seen you put a magnet in a piece of paper and then sprinkle iron filings on it? You know, it makes the little lines, okay, like an apple core.
If he says that the Northern Lights are made out of iron filings, I don't know what I'll do.
Earth's magnetic field dips in at the poles, and all around the place where
magnetic
it dips
poles,
in
but
are the Northern Lights.
Well, no, only on the north. There's the Southern Lights too, Kent. But you know what? You're close enough. I'm just gonna let it go. I'm not gonna drink for Kent's right, but like, this is like as close as he normally gets to being right. It's like you're almost there, Kent. I can see the true fact off in the distance, like a little lighthouse in the fog, but you're not quite there. Ah, Baba Ali says gliders, though. But gliders glide, they don't fly. There is a difference.
You get the Northern Lights or Southern Lights if you're at the South Pole if the sun is having storms. Storms on the sun will send these things down, and that apparently is what causes the magnetic field.
There you go. There's the other
If
big
the
part.
Northern Lights are going crazy, you probably are going to get lousy radio reception. You get a lot of static on your radio. When I was a young teenager, before I was even saved, my dad got me interested in ham radio, and I built my own transmitter, you know, Heathkit, put it all together, you know, and transmit and talk all over the world with Morse code.
I mean, if he did that, that's pretty cool. And I don't have any reason to think he didn't. So, hey, cool. I hope you had a ham radio operator's license, though, Kent. No pirate ham radios.
If the sun's over here, the sun's solar wind is pressing the magnetic field in closer to the Earth. On the opposite side, you can see the picture here, the sun's rays are drawing the magnetic field away from the Earth. It kind of pulls it out like a teardrop.
Yeah.
So at night you get better reception. If you have an AM radio.
Oh, okay. I was thinking cell phone, but yeah, nighttime is actually a better time for AM radio. So okay.
Go through the radio during the daytime and count how many channels you can pick up. If you slowly turn the dial, and so let's say you can pick up 25 channels in the daytime.
Kent, what's the point?
Same experiment at midnight, you probably pick up.
Remember, everybody, this is all about the Ice Age. That's what we're trying to learn about here. And Kent is talking about the solar wind and AM radio reception. Do 3 getting us 2 out of 30. Oh, and I didn't update this. We gotta update this guy. That's a Dapper Professional. We'll take that drink. 223 for $5 says, having an unforgettable luncheon also causes the Northern Lights. And do remember, everybody, Bent is hungry. So if we can get this till I think like 97%, Bent gets free pizza. Because Bent basically hasn't eaten in 3 or 4 weeks.
Since the last free pizza.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I'm the only way. This is the only way he eats. He actually has to hibernate most of the month in order to make it to this show. So basically, he just lies on the couch, like curled up, expending as little energy as possible for just days and days and days. Every once in a while, he gets up to take a drink of water. That's about it.
300 channels. Because the magnetic field's being drawn away, and there's low interference, and it's unreal how many stations you can pick up. So at night, I could hear stations from Mexico up in Illinois.
I have been in that area at night and not ever heard a Mexican AM radio station. But, like, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's completely meaningless.
You could hear them from, you know, a long ways away on a little transistor radio. Little pocket radio, stick your little antenna up and listen to, you know, South America. It's really incredible.
I'm just going to take a drink because Kent seems to think that Mexico is in South America. Because I bet that Kent thinks that the words Latin America and South America are synonyms.
Who cares? Okay. The Earth's magnetic field, though, dips in at the poles, and that's what causes the Northern Lights.
Vadim Marchenko says, does he think the magnetic field changes from day to night? So it's not that he's saying the magnetic field itself changes. The shape of the magnetic field is roughly about the same. However, which part of it you're in is going to change. So he is right that the solar wind compresses the magnetic field towards the Earth on the day side of the Earth and pushes it away from the Earth on the night side. And that as you rotate into the day side, that is pushing the magnetic fields in, and there's more also just solar wind total. So it's sort of like, does the sun change from day to night? Well, based on where you are on the Earth and what time it is, kind of, but also no, not really, because the sun is always the same. But like, from your standpoint, yeah, the magnetic field actually does change in shape relative to you based on the time of the day. But does it change in shape overall on a daily cycle? No, not really. Let's see. Dutch Tunicate Demonic Selection for $5 says, hold up, wouldn't Earth's curve prevent such long-range radio? So it depends, right? Radio can bounce off of various layers in the atmosphere, especially the ionosphere. And so if there is low interference and the right atmospheric conditions, you can actually get radio waves that are going up to bounce back down and go much farther than the curve of the Earth would allow if you were relying on direct line of sight. Oh, and we just got a whole bunch of reflections off the ionosphere and talking about ham radio that can bounce off the ionosphere. Yeah, so there you go. All right, Sean, who's been a member for 20 months, says, Ken thinks the words Mexico and South America are the same. Mothra. I think he actually would probably say that Latin America and Mexico are the same, but yeah, he might, or sorry, Latin America and South America, but yeah, he might also just think that Mexico and South America are the same thing. It wouldn't shock me if you, I wouldn't expect it, but also wouldn't like shock and surprise me if you handed Kent a globe and he drew a line somewhere around like New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, and then labeled below that Mexico, and that just spread across all the rest of the Americas to the south. Like, Kent might be in Brazil and say, I'm in Mexico! Like, that wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't predict it. But yeah, if I found out that Kent had once been to, like, the Pampas and been like, oh, wow, Mexico is really cool, as he sits around looking at gauchos, yeah, I would just be like, yeah, that tracks. That makes sense. That's a Kent thing to do. Jester for $5 says, Godzilla, Murphy, today I learned Kent sucks at snowballs, very unlike anyone does for what is in that bag called AIG. Well, we're gonna take a drink for it. I'm trying to parse it. Very unlike anyone does. I am not entirely sure what that means, but I'll take a drink for it anyway. Godzilla, Murphy, and a Godzilla, so here's a drink. Thank you very much. All right, Ray Elgatubello for $2 says, XHAIG, tu emisora de bolsa de chilotes. Thank you very much. I'm going to take a drink for that. And then Lieutenant Matt the Navigator has joined the channel at the Amnio level. And Lieutenant Matt the Navigator, of course, is basing that name and that profile picture on Matt, the beluga whale from Lower Decks, who is in fact a valued member of the crew of the USS Cerritos. So, yeah. Cerritos, or the Lower Decks is the first Star Trek show to actually show cetacean ops with cetacean characters in there. Although Prodigy showed mirror cetacean ops in a mirror version of the Voyager A with an evil humpback whale, which was, yeah, I did appreciate the line, even the whales are evil? Yes, even the whales are evil in the mirror universe. So, I guess the moral of the story is, if you have to go whaling, go to the mirror universe, because the whales there are evil anyway. Fade Degrade, Don't Build a Tower of Bubble Bobble for $5 says, AIG is a bag of RFK Jr.'s brain buddies. Oh. Also, trans rights are human rights. Rock on. Also, pizza for Bent. Yes, pizza for Bent. And then Border Barbecue for $19. I'm going to back up. Border Barbecue, who's been a member for 19 months, is at the Amnio level, says, I don't know who gave this to me. Whoever that was, thank you. Although, I think Mothra might want a pelagic tunicate wall. No pelagic tunicate walls. But there is a Mothra in there, so we'll take a drink. Let me update the count. 6% of the way to getting Bent's free pizza. Let's see.
Nice.
Oh, I missed Saloof's membership chat. Oh, I'm sorry. I did. Saloof says, is Bent a tardigrade in a human suit? with a Godzilla, and we'll take a drink for that. Bent, are you a tardigrade in a human suit?
I can neither confirm nor deny that I
Okay.
may or may not be a large cluster of tardigrades in a human suit.
Well, there you go. I was going to say I'll reveal the answer to that question if we get high enough, but then I realized I don't think I can actually completely confirm or deny that, because, like, how could I? I would have to, like, dissect you or something, and I'm probably not going to do that. Probably. You never know.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I can promise this. I will not vivisect you.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $4.99 says, gestures at guanacos in Tierra del Fuego. Is this Mexico? Oh, in Kent's mind, maybe. Maybe it is. I mean, I have actually met people who seem to think that Mexico was just anything south of the United States that wasn't, like, Africa. And this is like, oh no. No. There's so many countries.
Next thing to keep in mind. The pre-flood world was a lot different than it is today.
I mean, you
believe
keep
the
saying
Bible
that,
indicates
but
there was a canopy of water overhead.
the thing is, he's right. The Bible does indicate that. It's just that it's physically impossible, and so we know the Bible's wrong about that.
I don't know of any other way to explain all the phenomena we see.
What does Walt Brown think about that verse in the Bible?
Well, okay, to be fair, it's that there's a solid dome above which is water. So, you know, it's a little bit more complicated than just a canopy of water, but whatever. Icarus says, am I the only wrench human here? It is possible. I'm not seeing too many other mods. Which, if that becomes a problem, maybe I will expand the mod numbers. We have actually had significant growth in how many people normally show up to these since last time I increased the number of mods. So, who knows? Maybe I will add some more mods.
They separated the waters which were under the firmament from the
I don't remember his answer on that. We sat at Phoenix Airport for probably 2 hours, had lunch and sat there and talked for a couple hours. Really nice man, very smart man. PhD in physics, retired lieutenant colonel, I believe, from the Air Force, and now spends all of his time working on that one book.
Really?
And it shows. He's on his 27th edition. The book In the Beginning. It gets better every time. You know,
Who are we even
I had
talking
like his
about right
fourth
now?
edition. I was going through my bookshelf cleaning out, and I found one that I'd gotten years and years ago, and it was.
I didn't catch it.
I don't know if he
Oh,
said
I
it.
look at my original seminar notebook and think, oh,
Kent, what about the
We've
comets?
come a long way with that thing. We're on our 15th edition there.
What are you
And
talking
hopefully we'll
about?
keep getting better. Anyway,
AIG or a perfidious parcel of pusillanimous pili, says Joran 12 hours for a few seconds, Dax. And then Becca Justiniano, who's been a member for 14 months, says, don't let us get Bilbo'd. Hit like with a Mothra. Yeah, we are getting pretty close to getting Bilbo'd. But here's 2 drinks for those 2 membership chats. 1 and 2. Okay.
the magnetic field of the Earth is getting weaker. The Earth used to have a canopy of water above. Next thing to keep in mind. Who was Peleg?
I mean, he's someone mentioned in Genesis 10 in one of the genealogies of Noah's descendants.
I hate to say this about the Bible, but Genesis chapter 10 is a boring chapter. You're reading.
I mean, you know what? I'm going to take a drink for that being true. It is kind of boring. I'm not. Yeah, he's right. It is. And I say that as someone who generally likes the Bible, right? So, Roshan Lipstick to Equus Keller for $4.99 says, I still can't quite believe that Ken thinks water didn't evaporate before the flood. See, the thing is, that's the implication of his idea. But I bet if you asked him, hey, Kent, was there evaporation before the flood? He'd say, yeah, of course. And he would just never think about the fact that that would necessitate that sometimes you would pass the dew point in the upper atmosphere, and that would mean that condensation would have to fall, right? Like, he doesn't connect those things. Because remember, for him, science is just a list of facts that you can recite out or write out or whatever, right? He doesn't have any idea about, like, combining disparate aspects of science together into a whole that you can use as a theory to predict future data. That goes right over Kent's head. Kent fundamentally doesn't understand how science works. So for him, he can say, well, I guess there was evaporation, yeah. And he never makes the logical step that goes after that to say, well, then there must have been rain. You can't have evaporation for any significant amount of time without things coming out of evaporation. Or he might, if he's really thinking about it hard, he might say, well, there was just a lot of dew. Which isn't really going to be sufficient, since that would require that the condensation never rise above, like, the lower parts of the atmosphere, but, hey. Mark, right-handed Sith Smith for $2 says, to me, numbers was the worst. Yeah, numbers can be pretty boring. I mean, look, most of the law sections can be pretty boring if you are not interested in the topics of, like, prestige law systems in the ancient Near East or ritual purity and things like that, right? If you are interested in those, either for your own religious reasons or for, like, historical reasons, then yeah, I can see why most of that would be pretty boring. Rael Gatubella for $2 says, I thought Peleg was a famous soccer player. I think you're thinking of Pele. That might be it. But then again, I'm not exactly a soccer aficionado, so what do I know?
Through the Bible, you come to chapter 10, you know, all these guys begetting everybody else, and nobody can pronounce these names except Alexander Scorby, okay?
Or you could just look them up in like a Hebrew copy of the Bible and just sound them out. Right? Like, that's an option. You could just learn a little bit of Hebrew. That's it. Not even a lot. You don't actually have to learn, like, to understand Hebrew. You just have to learn the alphabet. And most copies of the Bible in Hebrew are fully pointed, which means that the vowels are written out in little dots and dashes and little tiny T's and whatnot. As long as you know what sounds they make, yeah, you can pronounce them just fine.
He pronounces every one of them just right, okay? It's incredible. So when I go through this, I listen to it on tape, you know, and let him pronounce them all for me, you know. My preacher always said, when you come to one of these names, just say grasshopper and go on, you know, because who knows, who cares what their name was. But the names all have meanings in the Hebrew. It's just really quite a study if you want to get into all that. But you're reading through Genesis chapter 10. It's got all these names, you know. So-and-so begat so-and-so, and he begat so-and-so, and he begat his son, and he begat somebody else. And you come to verse 25. And it says, unto Eber were born 2 sons. In the first place, this is unusual. Most of them, probably all of them had lots of kids. Why does it mention 2 sons for this guy? The name of the one was Peleg, for, that means because, in his days was the earth divided.
Oh, Goop23 had a membership chat that was lost. Oh, yes, I see it. I'm sorry about that. Goop23, who's been a member for 30 months, said, and is at the tetrapod level, says, haha, Kent said Peleg. That's true, he did. He did say Peleg, which is not a correct pronunciation. Although, to be fair to Kent, he did earlier say that he didn't know how to pronounce all the names. So, like, he's owning it. So I'm not gonna, like, call him out too hard, right? Because, look, it's okay to not know how to pronounce a bunch of names from Hebrew. Like, I don't... Fine. But calling it Peleg is very funny, because it does just sound like someone who's peed on their leg. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $4.99 says, who cares what the names were? The names have meaning. Yeah, that is a little bit of a contradiction there, right? All these names have meaning, and it's really cool, but who cares? Well, Ken, it sounds like you should care, but whatever. I'm not Ken's pastor. What a terrible job that would be. Can you imagine trying to be Ken's pastor? Ugh.
I would quit.
Yeah. Or just kick him out of the church. Do pastors have that power normally?
I don't know. I think so.
Okay.
Interesting. This is one of the few people in this whole chapter that it says anything about, you know. The rest of them, it just gives their name.
That's true. We'll take a drink.
But Peleg, it says, in his days was the earth divided. And it also names his brother. I don't recall. I think maybe there's one other one in the chapter where it even names his brother. If there are any brothers, okay?
Okay.
It says his brother's name was Joktan.
I mean,
Joktan is the Hebrew word that
Yoktan, but
means
whatever.
shorten.
Roshan Lipstick Eggskeller for $4.99 says, I like how Kent admitted just now that if he doesn't understand something, he just skips it. He must skip so much. I bet if you had Kent Hovind write his version of the Bible that only includes the parts he understands or thinks he understands, and then you came in and just got rid of all the stuff that he definitely didn't understand, like verifiably, demonstrably, you would be left with probably something smaller than the New Testament. You'd probably be left with a little pamphlet.
To make shorter, to diminish. And Peleg is the Hebrew word that means divide.
I mean, it's derived from palag, which means divide, dig a furrow. Sometimes it can mean plow. One weird thing is that the cognates in basically all other Western Semitic languages for that root have become like anatomical things that regarding haunches of animals, which is a really weird development. I'm not sure if that means that Hebrew is the one where there was a strange switch, but also in because I've looked this up in Halot before, and in Halot there's also like etymological information that's like, well, maybe in some like old Arabic or Aramaic scripts it might have meant something about division. It's a very weird root. It doesn't come up a lot in Hebrew, but yeah, it does mean like to divide or to dig a furrow through. So like if you were going to mark out your property from, say, your neighbor's property by like dragging a stick through the dirt to mark that, that would be a good use for the verb palag. And Peleg is just another form of that same root. Palag is the way you would usually list that root in a list of roots because it's the simplest form. It's the like third person singular non-future simple form or something like that, which has a name in Hebrew grammar. I don't remember the names of the verb forms in Hebrew grammar, so I always just describe them using standard English grammatical terms. Oh, Lieutenant Fitzgerald says, our church has asked someone not to come after they've caused constant emotional distress with many members, but I'm not sure they'd be forcibly removed if it came to it. Interesting. I know that when it comes to forcibly removing people, Jehovah's Witnesses will alert people that their invitations have been revoked, and if they then don't leave, they'll call the cops. But they themselves usually won't throw you out. But they'll let the cops do it. Roshan Elixir Equus Keller says, Kent got the meaning of Peleg correct? Yeah, actually he did. That's a good point. We should take a drink for that. Good job, Kent.
So here we have a verse that tells us in the days of Peleg, we have division and shortening. Something is made shorter and something is divided.
It actually doesn't say that because it doesn't describe why Yoktan is given the name Yoktan or Joktan if you're going to use the hard J. So that's not quite accurate there, Kent.
Doesn't tell us what. Usually they would name their son after some great event or after, there's a reason for the names in the Bible, okay? Like the Indians, we talked the story about. The Peleg means divided and Joktan means shortened. Well, if you look at the graph in the back of your seminar notebook.
Avini Marchenko says, shunning, yes, it's a thing. Jehovah's Witnesses break up families. So that is true, although that is not quite the exact same thing that I'm talking about. They will also do that to just non-members who have not been shunned, because you can't have been shunned unless you were a member, who are just disruptive. So, for instance, when it's coming up to, like, Easter time, they will start inviting anyone, like people at gas stations, anyone whose doors they've ever knocked at, to invite them to the memorial supper. And if you show up there, whether you've ever been associated with the Jehovah's Witnesses before or not, and you cause a problem, they will announce that your invitation has been revoked. And if you don't leave, they will call the cops on you. Which is not the same thing as shunning. And technically, since if you do that, you're not even a Jehovah's Witness, they won't shun you. They might not keep showing up at your door if they've been doing that. But like, if you then approach them and say, hey, I'm now interested in joining, I'm sorry for all that, I don't think there's going to be any further penalty because you were a Jehovah's Witness at the time. So don't quote me on that, though, because, I mean, I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. I don't want to be. Mark Right-Handed Sith Smith for $2 says, in broader context, Peleg refers to Babel. Yeah, so I'm hoping that Kent gets there, because what Peleg is really referring to is that, so in the narrative Genesis, right, the people don't scatter across the earth after the flood. Instead, they, en masse, move to the plains of Shinar, build the Tower of Babel, then God confuses their language, then they're sent out, and the 70 nations from the Table of Nations are split up as the inheritance for the gods, which are listed as the sons of God, each of which getting their inheritance, and the inheritance of Yahweh is Israel. And then the other 69 nations are the inheritance of the other 69 gods in the ancient Canaanite pantheon. And Peleg is supposed to be around that time when the lands are being divided up among the 70 sons of God. So, yeah.
The timeline of the different people's lifespans. You see Peleg right there. By adding up the dates, Peleg was born 100 years after the flood. He lived to be 239 years old, and he died.
Weird, because it looks like it said 209, but like, whatever, I don't care.
Well, his dad and his grandpa and his great-grandpa lived up into the 400s.
Okay.
His great-great-great-grandpa, Noah, lived to be 900. 950. Noah's son Shem lived to be 600.
I mean, they didn't, but what's your point, Kent? Also, remember, this is supposed to be about the Ice Age, everybody.
Go from 950 to 600, 3 of them for 400 years old.
Oh my goodness, drink from Mothra.
239, 238, 239. Then Peleg's son Ru lived to be 239.
My Unfinished Journey for $6.66, giving us our 10th out of 30 Teal Super Chats. Says, Hail Nero, Hail Daps, and Bent, and Hail the 69 Nations. Nice. No, it's 70 nations, but okay, we'll let it go. All right. I mean, I don't know, Bent, you might not get pizza. You might have to keep hibernating.
I think I'd be a little sad if that happened.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
230. Then it drops off to 148. And then 205. And that's the last guy over 200. Terah.
Okay.
Abraham, 175. Isaac. Everybody's lifespan gets shorter and shorter. King David finally died at 110. He was considered real old. Moses was 120 and considered real old.
Okay.
Today, if somebody's 120, they're real old.
Because I feel like I'm going to be 120 before you get to the point about the Ice Age.
So what happened in the days of Peleg? Well, we'll cover that when we get to the Hovind theory.
Oh my God.
And number 9. The pre-flood world, according to the Bible, had a canopy, had a layer of water under the crust of the earth. Now, this is critical to keep in mind.
So all of that, and we're just not going to get to it until next time.
This is a terrible presentation by Kent.
This is even bad by Kent Hovind standards. I kind of want to throw something.
Oh.
Like, it's one thing for Kent to be dumb, but like, you're just teasing us. Make your damn points, Kent. Instead, you waffled on about ages of patriarchs and how fast you can throw a damn snowball. Who cares? What's your point? What does it have to do with the Ice Age? Who knows?
The Bible tells us in Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. For he hath...
Drink for Psalms 24. Once again, it is Psalm 24. Because those are not chapters, they're individual psalms.
founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. What does that mean? God built the earth on top of the water.
Yeah, but Kent, that's the primordial chaos water that exists before God organizes the world. The thing that Kent is doing is he's taking the parts of the Bible that are so absurd that even he doesn't believe them. And he's just changing what they were originally meant in the first place, right? So, what Genesis is depicting is a cosmic ocean of chaotic waters, which, depending on which version of the creation myth you're reading, might have a giant chaos dragon in it, named Tiamat or Leviathan, depending on what language you're speaking, right? And then, in the creation myth we get from the Psalms, God slays Leviathan, and that's part of the creative act. But that doesn't really make it into Genesis 1 or 2, which are different stories. But since Kent takes Genesis 1 as his main creation story, then in that, God separates out the chaotic waters from the land by doing something. It's not really clear what, but he gathers together the water in one place and the land in another place, which means that the land is founded upon that chaotic water, the deep. There's nothing about subterranean oceans on like a globe Earth, right? Because they didn't believe in a globe. That's why there's a dome over the Earth that's made of solid material with windows in it to let water in for rain. Because this, remember, the Psalms also talk about the storehouses of heaven where God stores snow and rain. How does he get it down? By opening actual physical gates in the dome of the sky, the solid firmament. But Kent can't accept that because he wants to try to be a biblical literalist, while one, ignoring the contradictions in the three different creation narratives, one from Psalms and at least two from Genesis. He's got to just wash over all those contradictions. And then, because he's not a flat earther, he's going to somehow figure out a way to say he's being literal while also accepting a globe Earth without a firmament. And that's why he comes up with all these convoluted, internally incoherent, and physically impossible nonsense ideas that are definitely not in the Bible, by the way. It's because fundamentally, the Bible is too wrong about cosmology, even for Kent, if taken literally. So he doesn't.
Now, some people back 500 years ago were teaching.
Oh, wait. Roshan Lipstick to Equus Color for $4.99 says, I honestly thought it was time for Kent to rant about the Oort cloud. Well, maybe in the next video, right? Hey, we've just made $66.60 in chat revenue from Super Chats just now. So I'm pretty sure that means that this chat is now under the sway of Satan, and you're all going to be evolutionists now, because apparently Satan has lied to all of us about evolution, because that's how it works, and said so.
You know, the Earth is flat, and there's a layer, it's sitting on a layer of water, which is sitting on the back of a camel, or the back of a turtle, or something, you know. Nobody ever said, well, what is that standing on, you know.
In the Bible, what the land is standing on is just the waters of chaos. There are pillars under the land that help support it. What's below that? Not really clear. But the whole thing is surrounded by the waters of chaos.
We don't know, we can't go that far in our theology. But, okay. Actually, I think there's a crust of the Earth, maybe 10 or 15 miles of solid rock, and then water underneath, called subterranean aquifers. Mentions it again in Psalm 136. To him that stretched out the earth above the waters. So when God first made the earth...
Buy and Finish Sock for $2 says, don't rant about the Oort cloud. Like and share. Yes. I mean, I expect we'll get a rant about the Oort cloud soon. Because we've only got, 5 more minutes of Kent on this particular video, and then we're going to have to switch videos. So I expect there's a high chance that we will switch videos during the break.
There was a layer of water under the crust of the earth, according to Psalm 136 and Psalm 24. Something was different. We still today have water down in the ground.
Yeah, but you can't have a body of water primarily under the crust of the earth as just like an ocean, right? Because one of the things that you notice about the earth, if you actually study, say, earth science, is that it's a gravity tower, right? The most dense things are in the middle, and then out from that, it gets less and less dense, right? So in the middle, we've got mostly iron, but there's also other heavy metals, right? And then we go up from that, and we get to liquid iron, and then we can start getting to things like silicates. And then above the crust of the earth, which is the last layer that's mostly silicates, then we get things like water, and then finally air. The reason for that is that over long periods of time, the earth moves around, right? So it's not stable in any other configuration, because if you have dense things up here and less dense things down here, there's any kind of disturbance, they're going to want to swap places. Which means that you can't physically have a persistent ocean under the crust of the earth. They're just going to swap. Now you can say, well, that's just what the flood was. But that also raises the problem that the flood was inevitable no matter what happened, whether or not Adam and Eve sinned, which most Christians don't want to go with.
Sometimes huge chambers. You can go down in some of the caves, like Carlsbad Caverns, and go down there, and then they get into giant underground lakes.
Drink. Kent. There are no caves that go under the crust of the earth. Caves are a very surface level phenomenon. They go deep under the earth compared to how big you are, but compared to how big the earth is, they barely even exist. The reason that caves have lakes in them is because they are temporary, superficial structures, mostly formed by that very same water. They're not connected to subterranean, subcrustal oceans, and they physically can't be. This is very stupid. Very, very, very stupid. But Mark Right-Headed Sith Smiths for $2 says, Heavy Metal, Hail Lord, with a Mothra. I should watch Heavy Metal again. I like that movie. It's a fun movie. Although, don't show it to your kids until they're, like, I don't know, 17 or older or something. Not a kid movie, even if it is animated. Alright. And let's see, we are at 11 out of 30. We could still hit the, I'll wear this tutu again next week. And of course, if we get to the Dapper Tutu number, that means I'll wear it for the next Kent with Bent. So, yeah. You could make me wear the tutu twice in just this stream. Well, I mean, you could trigger two different instances of me wearing the tutu across two different streams just in this stream. Much like, the Lipstick to Equus Keller for $4.99 says, much like Jesus and the strong nuclear force, God kept the waters below from bursting forth. Yes. I guess if we just want to rely on miracles for that, but then at that point, why bother giving any kind of, like, rational, or even attempts at rational, like, ideas for any of this, right? Just go with the magic option all the way through. Olivia Williams, who's been a member for 32 months, says, cheer, with a King Ghidorah emoji, so we will take a drink. Thank you very much.
You can actually go scuba diving. Dangerous thing, pure black, in a cave. It's easy enough to get lost in a cave. Imagine scuba diving in a cave.
Yeah, there's a reason that I don't ever want to go cave diving. Ever. Let's see. Renee, Heat Problem Reborn, who's been a member for 14 months and is at the Amniote level, says, oops, I'm late. I guess I'll be catching up on 1.5 with a Mothra. Thank you very much, and enjoy the catching up.
You got 45 minutes of oxygen, you run out of, it's tough. So usually they're very careful about spelunking and scuba diving at the same time. Okay, last thing to keep in mind. Sometimes there are two ways to look at things.
Okay.
How fast was that calf going? Remember that from Seminar Part 4.
Yes,
I made a decision years ago, I'm going to believe the Bible until somebody can prove it's wrong.
No, but Kent, here's the thing, right? Numerous claims that you believe that the Bible makes have been proven wrong. But you didn't change your mind. Because you're lying when you say, I'm going to believe the Bible until it's proven wrong. The real answer is, the real thing you're saying is, I'm going to believe my interpretation of the Bible despite it being proven wrong. Or at least regardless of it being proven wrong. That's what's actually happening. Because many of the things that you think that the Bible says, like that there was a vapor canopy, that the earth is only 6,000 years old, that humans can live for like 900 years plus. I mean, that animals were created specially by God, or just life in general. All of these things have been proven wrong. Also many other things, like the historicity of the Exodus as portrayed, right? The global flood. All of these are just things that didn't happen. Like, if there was a Moses, he was almost nothing like what's portrayed in the Bible. There was no Noah, there was no Adam, there was no Eve. There almost certainly was no one who really resembles Abraham. Right? These are just things that didn't happen. There was no conquest of Canaan. Basically, if it's in the Bible and it's before the Iron Age, it basically probably didn't happen at all, period. And while the confidence level in that ranges from, like, pretty sure to, like, physically impossible, it absolutely didn't happen, still, within that, numerous things have been disproven of what Kent believes about the Bible. So he's definitely just lying here. Because Kent fundamentally doesn't care about evidence. He cares about his theology. That's more important to him than any amount of evidence could ever be. Jester, who's been a member for 14 months, says, I swear Kent is proof of the ability to read words is not the same as true literacy. Yes. Just like Jar Jar is proof that, well, even fools can fly high. And also, that the ability to speak does not make one intelligent. That too. Alright, here we go. Oh, wait. Fade Degrade, Don't Build the Tower of Bubble Bobble for $5 says, the ice canopy and submantle ocean caves were in the pamphlet according to Hovind. Most denominations exclude it from their Bibles. Yeah. Sometimes I think that Kent should just write his own version of the Bible with his own book that's in there that's full of, like, here's what I think the Bible really means based on a combination of wishful thinking and whatever, like, his pastor when he was a teen told him.
Other people have decided they are not going to believe the Bible until you can prove it right.
I mean, there are parts of the Bible that are demonstrably right. And that's one of the things, right? The Bible is not a single thing that makes, like, one single claim that you can either prove it right or wrong. The Bible contains numerous, sometimes contradictory claims, some of which are wrong, some of which are right. Right? Like, the Bible claims Cyrus the Great is a guy who released a lot of captives held in the Babylonian Empire. That's just true. Like, that's part of history. We know that's true, right? The Bible talks about King Josiah building a temple in Jerusalem and making sure that everyone has to go to Jerusalem to worship God. Like, we have really good reason to think that's true. But those things being true don't make other parts of the Bible true, right? Like, the fact that Josiah and Cyrus were historical figures doesn't make Noah a historical figure. That's just not how it works.
I don't think that's a wise choice, but that's up to them, okay? It's like the atheist that came to the preacher and said, Preacher, I don't believe anything in the Bible.
That would be a dumb thing to say, and I don't think this is a story that ever happened. I'm just calling it now. Anyone who says I don't believe anything that happened in the Bible, or anything that's in the Bible, I mean, have you just not read it? There's some very obviously true things in there.
He said, if you can prove one verse scientifically, I'll believe it.
That's even dumber. But because most of the claims are historical, not scientific in nature, but sure. Russian Lipstick Equus Keller for $4.99 says, the conquest of Canaan by Israel, I think you mean Israelites, is like the conquest of the US by Texas. Or do you mean Israelis? I'm not sure. Because that actually changes the context of what I would say in response to that, whether you actually mean Israelis or Israelites. But the thing is, there actually was kind of a conquest of the US by Texas in a military sense, in that the US entered the secessionist effort by the Texans on behalf of, the US immigrants who were trying to secede from Mexico so that they could keep their slaves. When Mexico was saying, no, we outlawed slavery, you just can't. So they're kind of. Also, Israelites just are Canaanites, right? They were a subgroup of Canaanites. We can see the Israelite identity growing out of a broader, just kind of mishmash of various Canaanite groups. We can actually, in the archaeological record, watch things spread, like the pork taboo, or dedication to Yahweh and the sort of waning of the cult of Asherah. Like, we can watch these things happen in the archaeological record. Hebrew itself is a Canaanite language. It's almost identical to the languages around, like Moabite or Ugaritic and things like that. So the Texas thing is a little bit different in that it was primarily English-speaking Americans who had immigrated to Mexico and wanted to set up the same slave plantations they had been doing in the U.S. And Mexico saying, can't do that. So there are differences.
Preacher said, okay. He grabbed the atheist around the head, grabbed his nose, and began twisting his nose back and forth. Of course, pretty soon the blood is pouring down his face. He said, man, what are you doing? Preacher said, well, I've proven the Bible. It says the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood. Proverbs chapter 30. I don't recommend you do that, but it is in there. All right? He proved a verse in the Bible scientifically. So,
yeah, another reason I'm pretty sure this is a story that didn't happen.
Next week when we come back, we're going to give you the Hovind theory of what I think happened to cause the flood, to freeze the mammoths, to cause the ice age, etc., etc. And I think you'll find this at least a plausible theory. Other people think, oh no, it's crazy, it can't happen that
I
way.
am very confident that is
Tell
not
me
what
where
I
I'm
will
wrong,
think.
Please, okay? Build a better mousetrap and show me how you catch them. I'd like to see that.
Okay, my better theory is just the scientific consensus, because that's the one that has this little pesky thing called evidence behind it. I don't know. But what that means is we're just going to take our break right now. I'm going to grab the next video, which I have already downloaded, and we will start the next video after the break. The break might be a little bit longer than normal, but also, hey, we are right about at the halfway point of the stream, and we're also right about halfway to the super chat goal. So I believe in you guys. We only need 16 more super chats in the next hour or so. Let me see, actual double check it. Yeah, we have an hour and 3-ish minutes. Get 16 more super chats of $5 or above, like the teal color, like what Roshan and Fade Degray's most recent super chats have been. So I believe in you guys. You'll make me wear this during Matt with Maddie. Assuming it's Matt with Maddie. If it's not, I'll just wear it anyway. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to play first the coming teaser trailer, whatever, for the next episode of Star Trek Lexington while I queue up the next video. And then it will be on to the musical stylings of Bent Hovind. And then I'm going to have to grab myself a drink. So bear with me. It might be a little while. All right. Here we go.
Captain's Log, Stardate 7086.8. We have once again been ordered by Admiral Stoker to a location previously visited by the USS Enterprise, Beta Niobe. Beta Niobe was, just under a year ago, home to the planet Sarpedon. Now, it is likely a diffuse cloud of debris in the Beta Niobe planetary nebula. The inhabitants traveled back into Sarpedon's past. The Admiral believes that the Atavachron device used by the people of Sarpedon may have actually been a Telecall device, and we are to investigate the remnants of Beta Niobe. Our orders are to scan the area looking for any signatures that match other presumed or known Telecall technology we've encountered before, such as on Bacchus 4 or Pegasi 5. Of course, every time we come across Telecall technology, something out of the ordinary and generally hazardous happens, so I've ordered that the ship go to yellow alert when we arrive tomorrow morning. Further, when the Enterprise skirted Beta Niobe on her way to a conference on Babel just a few months ago, they encountered a time-reversed, antimatter-dominated region of spacetime. So the crew knows that we may go to red alert at any point. Telecall related or not, strange things have happened at Beta Niobe, and I suspect they are still happening.
Strange things are indeed still happening at Beta Niobe. As soon as the crew arrives, time starts acting strangely. But even more than that, the fabric of reality seems to be undone in the vicinity of the White Dwarf. Can the crew get back to normal space and solve the mystery before their local time unravels completely? Find out next time on Star Trek Lexington, only on the Top Hats Off channel.
Okay, we are back. Oh, I forgot to put on my Santa hat here. Can't forget that. That's very important because it is, of course, the tail end of old calendar Christmas time. I want to say before we start the next video, first, Roshan, a lipstick to Equus color for $4.99 says, "Stop believing in us. We suck." No, I will keep believing in you for now. But I do want to say thank you so much, everybody, for all your generosity. These things like super chats, joining the channel memberships, the Patreon, all of that is why the channel can keep going. And it's an uncertain thing having no particular fixed amount of like money coming in. Because it can be scary, right? Like, how much am I going to get in February from all my sources? I don't know. It could be, there's a wide range of how much it could be, and it's hard to budget and things like that. And you guys help make it so that it's something it's doable, right? But if you are looking to help make it less uncertain, one of the greatest ways that you can do that are the Patreon or the channel memberships. That's because those come in basically monthly, and as I can just look at how much those are and estimate a minimum amount that I'm going to be having. That isn't dependent on how much I get in super chats or how many memberships get gifted or things like that, right? I can look at my non-gifted memberships and my patrons, and I can figure out, okay, worst case scenario, this is how much I have to budget with. And that's really helpful, and it helps keep the channel afloat, right? Because if it starts dipping below the point where like I can reliably pay the bills, well, then I have to go do something else. And so far, that hasn't happened in about 5 years, and you guys are the reason for that. If you're currently someone who is enjoying the show, but you're not currently helping with that stability, and you'd like to financially, Patreon and memberships. Those are the two biggest ways. I get to keep the most on the Patreon. That starts at $1 a month. You can get a 15% discount if you go annual on that, which means you can get a 1-year membership to the Patreon for less than $11. There's the memberships start at $1.99. There are higher perks. Both of them give you access to my Discord server that's just for supporters. I think it's a really great Discord server. I'm not going to say there's never any drama in there, but like overall, I think it's a very supportive, very fun place to be. I hang out in there pretty often. If you tag me in that, there's a very high chance I'm going to see it within probably an hour or so. Usually faster than that. I'm just kind of giving an outside number. Of course, if I'm asleep, that changes. But yeah, please consider those. If an annual or a monthly thing isn't your thing and you just want to help out, again, super chatting, gifting memberships, all that is great. But also, both Bent and I have wish list links in the description. Bent also has a Patreon link in the description. Those are Amazon wish lists. So, if you want to get me a snack, there's some of the snacks in there. If you want to get me a comic book, I have some comic books in there. There's also a very expensive recording studio that I think might help audio, but it's very expensive, so get why you might not want to get that one. But there's also a merch store. There's merch linked in the description, right below this video. There's a few different designs. There's lots of different options for products. There's onesies, hoodies, t-shirts, blankets. The blanket that is behind Bent right there that has the real me on it, that's from that store. So, and it has not faded in 4 years or something?
It will never fade.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's expensive, but it's pretty great. And yeah, look, if financial support is just not in the cards for you right now, if you can't afford it, or you just don't want to, I totally get that, and you do not have to. If, however, you could, please like this video and share my videos, comment, that kind of stuff. Now, we do have a few things to read. Christine V for $2 says, Kulupu AIG Lisama Pipoki Palisa Toki Pona. Oh my goodness, don't think I've had a super chat in Toki Pona before. I'll take a drink. And look, here's my thing about Toki Pona, right? I think Toki Pona is pretty cool. However, I do not accept its premise that it has so few Lexemes. Because every Toki Pona community I've ever looked into has a whole bunch of new neologisms that are combinations of basic Toki Pona Lexemes, which have now become morphemes to create more vocabulary. Because it turns out there's sort of a minimum number of conceptual categories that humans want to be able to unambiguously talk about, and Toki Pona is way below that. So, while I do quite like Toki Pona, I do not buy that it's the language with 500 words or 200 words or whatever it pretends to be. But also, Lieutenant Matt the Navigator has gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, which brings us to 28%, which is, we're not quite at halfway to getting Bent Pizza. So, Bent, I think you're going to have to start, but we are going to take 5 drinks. And hey, look, this time my drink isn't transparent. 1, 2, 3, 4. 53 says that he sent a Tokipona super chat a few years back. You know what? I believe you. I just don't remember. I'm sorry about that. Also, Borg Emporia reminds me, don't forget to mention Sheepit. That's another great way to help out the channel. So, the way that my animations get done, right, like when I'm doing like a clay dapper animation or whatever, is that I use a render farm called Sheepit, which is a free render farm. The way it works is I render for them when I'm not doing anything else with my computer, and that gets me points. And then when I need things rendered, I spend those points to get other people to render for me when their computers aren't doing anything else. Now, other people can render as me, and I have instructions on how to do that in the description. If you want to help me out in that way, it can help me get my videos out faster, and consistently be like first in the queue for who's getting their frames rendered. You can download the Sheepit client. You can use the login information from my description, and then just run it. Now, this will consume some electricity, but it's basically about the same as playing a video game, right? So, if you have some spare time and you don't mind using a little bit of electricity to help me out, that's a great way to do it too. It doesn't cost much more than, probably a few bucks a month or so in power. So, there you go. Vyachemenko says, also, if Vicious Situation gets worrying again, please get her to start another list. Look, I am trying to make sure that I am aware of how Vicious Situation is doing, especially given that there's now fires, which are on the other side of, where she's not too worried about it. But that combined with the tough time that's been going on, I'm trying to make sure that if she needs help, that we can help her out. So don't worry too much on that front. Let me do the worrying on that front, and let Vish do the worrying on that front. And when it's time for everyone else to worry, we'll let you know. Roshino Lipstick Equus Color for $4.99 says, did you try putting non-dairy coffee creamer in your hard Baja Blast or Ben's soft Baja Blast, asking for her friend? I did not.
No, I didn't either.
That sounds absolutely awful. I hope no one would try to do that. Like, that honestly sounds like gag-inducing. Like, ugh. I also tend to use dairy creamer because, I don't know, I hate cows. Probably not it. I don't know. All right, here we go. This is Class 2, the sequel.
This is class number 2 of our
It's very quiet.
4, and hopefully, if we can hurry, we'll try to get everything done in the next 9 weeks and the next 9 classes and finish up what's on our seminar part 6 and our seminar part 7. Okay. We told you last week we reviewed some science, about the Meissner effect and about the super cold temperatures in outer space and throwing a snowball too fast, etc., etc. I'm going to give you the Hovind theory of what I think happened. This is not all original with me. Nothing's original with me. But I've put together bits and pieces that I've gleaned from various places that I think make sense about what might have caused the freezing of the mammoths, the tilt of the Earth, the beginning of the seasons, the cracking of the crust of the Earth, all these things that apparently happened at the time of the flood. Here we go. First I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. And then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. That's supposed to be a good teaching technique, okay?
That sounds terrible. Just tell us. Please, just tell us.
So I'm going to go with you real fast first.
DM Carl Lips and Wing says, don't you worry about X, let me worry about X. Dapper Dinosaur 2025, which is in fact a great Futurama reference. I do appreciate that. Look, I like Futurama. Bent has not seen Futurama. That should be our next super chat goal. If we get enough super chats on the next Kent with Bent or other, I will strap Bent to a chair with electrical cords, pry open his eyelids with toothpicks, and make him binge the entirety of Futurama in one go.
While I'm hibernating?
No, it'd have to be it'd be a goal that's so high that you would get pizza for it.
Oh, okay.
But you'd be tied down, so I would have to hold the pizza for you.
That's fine.
Okay.
You could feed me pizza.
Okay.
While I watch Futurama.
Yeah. Well, you're forced to watch Futurama, regardless of your consent.
Will I be allowed to laugh at the joke?
Yes. That will be encouraged.
Okay, good.
Okay.
8 points I want to cover, and then we'll go through and talk about each point. Number 1, I think Noah and the animals got safely into the ark.
Oof, yeah, Sulu says, have mercy with the doggo episode. There's 2 episodes of Futurama that actually do make me kind of choke up a little bit, and it's that one, and also the one about Fry's brother. I'm like, every time I watch either of those, I'm like, crying, you are. Those are, like, for some silly cartoon by Matt Groening, holy crap, that thing can tug at your heartstrings when it wants to.
God shut the door. Number 2, a 300-degree below zero ice meteor in space is full of ice comets, came flying through the solar system. And
I mean, it's not full of ice comets, but yeah, they're there, so sure, whatever, Kent. Full makes it sound like if you launch a rocket into orbit, like you're just going to be having to dodge comets all the time, which is not true, but whatever, who cares?
began to break apart. As it broke apart, some of the fragments got caught and became the rings around other planets. Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune have rings around them, ice rings. We'll get into.
Do you think Kent has any idea of how, like, unlikely that is, given how orbital mechanics works? Do you think?
No clue what he's talking about, and it's so funny.
I'm just gonna take a drink for this ice comet is just sprinkling ice particles around, forming the rings of Saturn. Oh my goodness. Jake, insert clever Dapper inside joke here. Nelson for $5 says, Dapper, I thought you didn't discuss your kinks on it. I make an exception for Futurama-based bondage kinks. That's the one exception. Jeez, that's like canon Dapper lore now.
That in a minute. And some of the fragments hit the planets and caused craters like the moon, and some of the fragments hit the Earth and landed on the North and South Pole, freezing the mammoths.
Oh, okay. How would it freeze the mammoths? Okay. So what Kent seems to think is that if the comet is cold enough, that will lower the temperature of the Earth. But here's the problem, right? Heat is an amount of energy. It doesn't go negative, right? If something is cold and heat goes from you to it, the total energy in that system combining you two hasn't changed. So if I take a ice cube, right, and I put it into this drink, right, it's got 2 ice cubes now, but let's say I put a 3rd ice cube in, I might actually temporarily lower the temperature of this beverage. But if I take as a system the cup, the liquid, and ice, I've actually added heat to this cup of live wire, right? So if an asteroid comes in from from outer space, it's going to add whatever thermal energy it has. So if it's at minus 300, and we'll say Fahrenheit, right? So, because, Kent's an American who is pretty old school and scientifically illiterate, so I'm assuming that he's using Fahrenheit. So that means that we have, 150 degrees left worth of space between absolute zero and that comet? That sound about right? I'm rounding here.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's pretty close.
Ring for Godzilla. Okay, so we can then just go look at what the thermal capacity of ice is and figure out how many joules of heat energy that is, right? So it's going to add at least that much thermal energy to the planet. But also, it's going to have an immense amount of potential energy, which is just the energy that things have when you drop them. So this is my D100. It's very fancy. Right now, it has potential energy. And if I drop it, it converts to kinetic energy. And then, now that my hand has caught it, that potential energy has transferred into thermal energy in my hand. Now, the amount of potential energy here, between here and here, very small. So the amount of actual heating to my hand is negligible. So it doesn't matter, right? But if I had thousands of tons of ice dropping from outer space, that's going to be a huge amount of potential energy. And it's going to get converted into a huge amount of kinetic energy. But then where's it going to go? It's going to be thermal energy, right? It's going to heat the planet. I don't care how cold... For Godzilla. I don't care how cold the comet is. It physically cannot heat up the Earth. In fact, speaking of Futurama, That's a joke in Futurama that you can't cool off the planet by bringing ice from space in. Because the energy balance doesn't work. They have a whole thing about how they solve global warming by grabbing ice from, like, Saturn's rings and bringing it in a big ice truck and lowering it into the oceans. Except, that's impossible. It can't work. Like, when Kent's actual scientific theory is just a joke about how his theory doesn't work from Futurama, maybe it's time for him to reconsider. And also, Ben, you should watch Futurama. Okay, so we got a couple of super chats here. Roshan a lipstick to Equus Keller for $4.99 says, also Hermes being Bender's father keeps making me cry. Oh yeah. little bird, fly through my window. Yeah, that's... It doesn't get me as much as the Yancey or the Doggo episode, but no, that's a good one too. Also spoilers, because you know. Pegajace for $10 says, hey, at least Icy Comet is more plausible explanation for Saturn's rings than the Holy Prepuce. Yes, that is true. Oh, hey, we only need 11 more super chats. And I will be forced to wear this on Matt with Maddie.
Point 3. As it approached the Earth, it shattered in space. Super cold snow and ice rained down around the poles, mostly around the North and South Pole. Then this sudden dump of ice caused the Earth's crust to crack.
What? Why? What? Why? Why would snow cause the Earth's crust to crack? What?
It's all magic for him, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness. All right.
Which released the fountains of the deep. The rapid spreading of the ice caused all the ice age effects, carved out the Great Lakes, made all the drumlins and terminal moraines, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It buried...
Take a drink from Mothra. Kent, snow doesn't cause just glaciers immediately, right? That requires the actual slow buildup of ice. All right, well, we're going to talk about that in a second after I read the super chat. Lieutenant Fitz of Rage for $5 says, AIG is the conduit from which Peleg's lower extremities encountered a focused stream of liquid excrement. Just take a drink. All right, so what is a glacier, right? Because remember, in the last video, Kent actually said that terminal and lateral moraines were caused by glaciers, and he was right about that. We took drinks for it. Okay. Glaciers do form as a result of snowfall, right? But a glacier is not just snow. It is compacted snow that has formed into mostly solid ice. And the thing is that it takes time for that to happen. You can't just one day have a really heavy snowfall and the next day wake up to a glacier. When snow falls, it, because of its shape, right, it has air pockets. But as more snow falls on top of it, that can crush the ice crystals down. In fact, it can even break the ice crystals. And it forces the air into smaller and smaller pockets. And so over time in a glacier, what you end up getting is primarily just solid ice with little bubbles of air. And we actually use the bubbles of air to learn about the climate in the past, right? So we take a big ice core, and you can actually sample the air in one of those bubbles to see what the atmospheric contents were like when that snow fell. But it has to actually compact. Now, I think most people here have experienced snowfall. I mean, I have, right? So, Bent, in your experience, does snow compact down into a solid in the course of, say, a winter?
Yeah, it can be icy.
But
by the end of
does
winter.
snowfall itself, like out on a hill, actually compact to a glacier in one winter?
No, not a glacier.
Right. Yeah, it can become like easier to walk on and more solid, but it's not going to be a glacier. So, in order to get these glaciers, and remember, we're talking about glaciers that were like hundreds of meters tall across entire continents. To get a glacier that big requires a lot of snow and a lot of time. That's the thing, right? You can't just have a bunch of snow and then just say, well, now there's a glacier. It has to compactify and start actually becoming dense enough to do things like flowing in a non-avalanche pattern that actually can do things like leave moraines. So this explanation, even if Kent were right, that it could cool off the Earth, which he's not, because that's not how thermodynamics works, right? Like, this entire thing is just Kent not knowing thermodynamics. But even if we ignore that fact, even if it were right that it would cool off the Earth, it wouldn't be able to form, like, global-scale glaciation events. Becca Justiniano's loving the what the F face on my human suit. Yeah. This is... I will give the human suit this. It has more facial expressions than the real me. Because it has more facial muscles. Roshan Lipsticked Equus Keller for $4.99 says, yeah, they're right. If the moon can emit cold energy in an icy comet / canopy, can definitely cool the Earth. That's a good point. I didn't actually really think about that. He's basically making the same mistake about thermodynamics as Flurfs do when they say that moonlight is cold. So Kent is going full Flurf. All right, everybody, I'm going to just take a drink for Kent going full Flurf, because that is a very stupid thing to do.
The mammoths in super cold snow, 300 to 400 below zero.
Okay, but the mammoths weren't buried in snow, Kent. They were buried in, like, bogs, which isn't snow. Like, Ben, I don't know, have you ever been to a bog?
No, I have not.
I used to live in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is famous for having cranberry bogs, which are just bogs where you can grow cranberries, because I don't know if you know this, but cranberries have to grow in bogs. So, now you know. Hey, I can say this, though. You know what they're not made of? It's snow. They're not made of snow. There's a lot of water. There's also a lot of sediment, plant debris, dirt, soil, all that stuff. So, no, they weren't buried in super cold snow.
So they suffocated, standing up, and froze in 3 to 5 hours. It was so cold. It caused the Earth to wobble for the next few thousand years, and it made the...
How? Right? If it had been a big cometary impact, I would get that, right? I would understand why you would say this. But Kent's idea is apparently that the comet broke up and rained down as snow? How would that cause a wobble in the Earth's orbital axis?
It's all magic.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? If it's going to break up and be distributed across the North and South poles, for some reason, because it's not, because, like, it's not going to be magnetically attracted, but whatever, we'll pretend it is. It still means that overall, on average, like, the forces imparted onto Earth are going to basically average out to zero on either end. And all that's going to happen is that you'll have the kinetic energy converting to thermal energy ultimately. Well, the potential to kinetic to thermal, right? Don't want to skip the kinetic part. Which means you just heat the Earth a bit. That's it. That's all that happens in the long run. So, like, even if we take seriously the basic ideas of Kent Hovind's model, right? That super cold comet comes in, deposits some craters on the moon or whatever, and then breaks apart and falls as snow on Earth, you don't get frozen mammoths and a wobbly axis. Like, you just don't. You get slight warming at best. Okay, Robert Madewell, who's been a member for 44 months, wow, and who is at the amniote level, says, I heard the cold moonlight is composed of photons. F-A-U-X-T-O-N-S, photons. That is great. And you need to get that to, like, MC-Tune and, like, FTFE, and I have no idea why the doorbell just rang. So that's a fun thing. Rail got you Bella for $5. Says, he could have said moonlight causes lycanthropy, and that would have been infinitely less stupid than saying it's cold. That's true. Sorry about the dog. Can't not bark if the doorbell rings. Heather talks to randos on Transcoon for $2, says, cranberry fields are only flooded during harvest. That's disappointing. I hate that. They're still not made of ice, though. Oh. So, let me update how much is... Oh, hey, we're at 38, so So, wait, Bent, I have bad news.
Yeah.
You're gonna
Yeah.
starve.
Eh.
Yeah.
I guess that's fine.
Canopy that used to protect the Earth collapsed because cold air hits warm air, rains, all the rain came down. The canopy's no longer up there. We're not protected like they were before the flood.
I love that he thinks that the thing that would collapse, the vapor canopy, that would collapse immediately just because of, gravity, is like cold air and warm air interacting and room for Godzilla. DM Carl Ipsumwing says, "We're whalers on the moon. We carry a harpoon, but there ain't no whales, so we tell tall tales. We're whale and sing a." I screwed it up. I'm gonna start over so I don't screw up. We're whalers on the moon. We carry a harpoon, but there ain't no whales, so we tell tall tales and sing this merry tune with a Godzilla. So take a drink for that Godzilla too. Thank you very much. The Futurama references are coming thick and fast today. Ben didn't even realize that was a Futurama reference.
I assumed. I just
Okay.
assume most of them are drama references at this point.
It's really a good show, man.
I'm sure it's great.
I know you've been
I'll
doing.
have to watch it at some point.
Just next time you're like, hey, should I watch which episode of The Next Generation should I watch? Watch whatever episode you want, but then watch one episode of Futurama.
Okay, maybe I'll do that.
Okay.
And the Earth was completely covered by water. Then, during the first few months of the flood, the dead animals settled out and were buried. Those became fossils. Swirling waters deposited great piles of dead plants and animals, and they became coal and fossil graveyards over the next few hundred years.
Okay, but you know what? We've gone over all of the nonsense with the fossil record and how none of that actually works. It's not hydrodynamically sorted. It's not ecologically sorted. None of this works. It's all physically impossible. But you know what? If he's just going to skip over it and not go into detail, I don't feel like I need to go into much detail. You guys know that the fossil record corresponds with neither ecological nor hydrodynamic sorting. So we'll just move on.
During the last few months of the flood, the unstable plates of the fractured Earth shifted, moved around. Pieces lifted up, other places sank down. Thin spots would sink down, and the water would rush in, filling it in to make an ocean. The places where it lifted up would become the mountain ranges. On the way from the top to the bottom, it's going to wipe out a lot of canyons, or wash out a lot of canyons.
No, it's not. It's going to wash out floodplains, and here's how I know that. We have examples of cataclysmic, almost biblical proportion flooding, right? We have them on Earth in places like the Channel Scablands in Washington. We also have them all over Mars. And what they don't form is canyons, because canyons have to form with slow-moving water going through already lithified sediment. That's how you get things like tributaries, switchbacks, things like that, which canyons tend to have. On the other hand, actual floodplains have things like large-scale ripple marks, water spreading out horizontally over a large area, smooth-sided channels. The results of a flood are fundamentally incompatible with canyons. And I don't know what it would take to get creationists to realize this, but it's very, very basic, like fluid dynamics. The faster and more mass you put down in a unit time of liquid flowing over a surface it's going to go by in weather and erode, the smoother the erosion marks are going to be. That's just very, very basic physics in terms of like hydrodynamics. Oh well. Roshina Lipstick Equus Keller for $4.99 says this super chat is the same color as old Bessie. Oh, that's true. And how close are we? We only need 6 more super chats. That's pretty close. Pretty close. I think we could do it.
In a hurry. So canyons were eroded because the sediment was still fairly soft.
Okay. Ben, you ever pile mud on top of mud?
It just becomes a big mud pile.
Yeah. And do the walls of that mud pile, do they like sheer vertical cliffs? Or do they kind of go...
Yeah, they kind of just collapse into big piles of mud.
Yeah. So, you've been to the Grand Canyon.
Oh yeah.
Now, the Grand Canyon, the walls have different like angles, but does it have relatively sheer, pretty close to vertical faces?
Very much so.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Was the Grand Canyon formed while that sediment was still soft and kind of forming little U-shaped? No.
I highly doubt it.
Yeah, that's because you are right. In fact, it would physically be impossible for that to have happened. The Grand Canyon had to be carved out after that rock had solidified, or lithified, to give it its technical term. Heather talks to randos on Trainscoon, says, braided channels. Don't know exactly what the context is, although we do have braided channel deposits here in Arizona. You know about the Chinle Formation there, Bent?
No, I don't.
It is a Triassic formation that you can find in parts of eastern Arizona that was formed in part by braided channels going down to the sea. It's where you find Arizonosaurus, which is not a dinosaur, but is still very cool. Sail-backed archosaur that was predatory. And quadrupedal.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Arizonosaurus. It was actually a Pseudosuchian, so it's on the crocodile side of the Archosauria, not the bird side. Arizonosaurus. Pretty cool. Also, braided channels make up a good portion of the Hell Creek Formation, which is where we primarily get things like T-Rex and Triceratops. And Edmontosaurus. Which also, I saw someone questioning what someone could possibly be making in Blender in the Blender help forums. Like, what is this abomination? And it was just literally a pretty good model of an Edmontosaurus. It's like, I'm sorry you don't know what dinosaurs are, guy, but this is actually a pretty good model of an Edmontosaurus. I don't know what to tell you.
After the first few hundred years after the flood. Over the next few hundred years, the ice caps generally retreated from Kansas City clear back to where they are now in Alaska. This would add water to the ocean, making the oceans colder, deeper, and wider, which...
Okay, first, yes, a comet would ultimately add water to the ocean. That's true. But again, that's not how thermodynamics work. This would add heat to the whole Earth system. The only thing this idea could do is make Earth hotter. No, the only thing it could do to the Earth's like temperature, right, is make it hotter. Obviously, it could have other effects in terms of like, seismic or hydrodynamic effects, like whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. But yeah, you can't make things cooler by just dropping things from space that happen to be cold onto the thing. That's not how that works. Also, how would it not heat up as a result of just, sunlight? Pet knows that there's sunlight in space, right? No, he doesn't. Remember last week how he told us that space is super cold? And he just ignored the fact that the sun is also in space, shining on things, and that's why things that are in space, like the Earth, which is in space, get hot.
Exactly.
I forgot. I had to take a drink. I forgot that Kent doesn't know that the sun hates things in space, even though that's how he gets warm, and he's on Earth, which is in space. This guy. I usually think of Raw Matt as the dumbest creationist.
Mm-hmm.
But the Hovind theory is seriously making me reconsider that assessment. Is this
so bad?
Okay, we're gonna start a poll, right? Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start not a Q&A. Get out of here. Okay, start a poll. Is the Hovind theory dumber than pre-Yiddish? Question mark in there so people know it's a question, even though it's grammatically formed like a question, so whatever. All right, let's see what people think. Because to me it seems like it might be, but what do I know? We got a couple super chats. Roshino Lipstick Equus Keller for $4.99 says, AIG is a sensual sack of things that belong in nature's pocket during full tumescence. Oh no. I'll take a drink. Tumescence is such a weird word for me. I don't know why. Yeah. And let's see. Shano07 AU, which might mean gold or might mean Australia, for $7.99 redues, says AIG is a duffel of dried dingo dongers. I'll take a drink. That was a very Australian super chat, and I appreciate it. It was Australian in terms of the currency and the content. Much appreciated, mate.
Which is why we have a continental shelf, which we'll get into in a minute. Cold water absorbed carbon dioxide, and lifespans were shortened in the days of Peleg because of the lack of greenhouse gases, which allowed more radiation in, and numerous factors.
I was about to ask which greenhouse gases, but I guess water vapor is a greenhouse gas. It's actually a pretty good one, so like, yeah, okay, fine. That's fair enough, I suppose. I'm not sure why he thinks greenhouse gases would make the Earth or make humans live longer. I can tell you this. Increasing the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is not making humans live longer. Not at all. That is not a thing. In fact, hey, if you look at California, the increase in things like CO2 has caused about 24 or so people, even more, to live considerably shorter than they otherwise would have. So, which, by the way, hey, if you're not going to help me out financially, even if you are, please check out to see what like disaster relief options there are for the California wildfires. It's been really, really bad. Thousands of homes have been destroyed. Whole entire cities are almost entirely just gone, right? Whole neighborhoods just don't exist anymore. They physically aren't there. The land is, but none of the structures are, right? There are places in around LA right now where there's just no human structures left, basically, except for like chimneys and so do see about that. I have been thinking to see if like there's something I can do with some kind of fundraiser or not. But one thing I am happy to report is that the charities that are helping out are reporting that they're getting a lot of donations. In fact, sometimes so much in donations that when people come to donate like physical goods like food and clothing and whatnot, they don't have places to put them. So one thing I can say is the people in the area who are able to are really stepping up, and that is heartwarming. So that's good to know. But yeah, it's a lot of people in the LA area are having a rough time. And it's almost entirely a direct result of excess greenhouse gases, Kent. Command Cyborg, who's been a member for 46 months and is at the Sauropsid level, says, "Hey, I caught a live one, and a human suit at that," with the cool glasses emoji. Nice, D100. Yeah, this is fun. It's full of sand to help it not roll too far. And it's faceted, like a sort of like a golf ball with divots, except instead of divots, they're just like flat faces. So it comes to a rest on one of them, and then the one opposite that, it's pointed straight up. That's what you roll. Very neat. With a shotness. And then there's a drink and a Godzilla, so we will drink for the Godzilla. I can't think of a clever AIG's a bag of dicks thing, so I forfeit my remaining 8 free letters this month. Excellent. Mark Right-Handed Sith Smith for $5 says, "The Hovind theory is dumber than reformed Egyptian," with the Mothra. Oh, we'll take a drink. Yes. I do think the Hovind theory is dumber than reformed Egyptian. Because at least when Joseph Smith was making up reformed Egyptian, it was plausible given what people knew at the time. It's not plausible anymore, but like, he didn't know that. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $4.99 says, "If tumescence bothers you, remember there's a genius called clitoria." Or sorry, genus called clitoria. Isn't that a flower? Isn't that the flower that changes color like as a result of like changes in pH or something? And like you can make color changing tea with it? I seem to remember that being the case. Which actually somehow bothers me. It's not that tumescence bothers me, it's just a weird word. It feels weird. But not like gross, it's just weird. I don't hear it much. It makes me feel like I'm reading one of those like trashy romance novels, although I don't actually know if they use that word in those novels, because I haven't ever actually read one. I just imagine that that's the kind of thing that goes into them. Which, hey, if you have read trashy romance novels, 1, absolutely no shame in that. Have fun with it. But 2, let me know in the comments. Do they use the word tumescence? Let me know, because I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Probably entered in here, but lifespans were shortened in the days of Peleg. Lastly, the Earth still shows the effects of this devastating flood as a reminder of God's hatred for sin.
Where, Kent? There is literally nothing on Earth that even hints that there could possibly have ever been a global flood. Ever. And there's a huge amount of evidence that it's physically impossible for it to have ever happened, as described in the Bible, at least.
Okay, start at the beginning now. I told you what I was going to tell you. Now I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Noah and his family got into the ark. The Lord said unto Noah, Come thou. Now there's an awesome sermon right here. God didn't say, Go into the ark. He said, Come into the ark. So where does God have...
Being told that Clark Ashton Smith sure uses it. All right. There you go. Some do. I read the occasional trashy romance novel, says Mark Reinhard and Sid Smith. Okay. Well, there you go. My guess was right. I think the closest I've ever come to reading one of those is people who occasionally remind me that like Chuck Tingle dinosaur erotic romance novels exist. Because every once in a while, people send me the covers or links on Amazon to those, and I'm like, yep, that sure is a book about someone and some human and dinosaurs in a Chuck Tingle book. Although Chuck Tingle's social media presence is rather amusing. Becca Justiniano says, I write trashy romance novels. Oh, interesting. And have never used the word tumescence. Okay. Ains Miscellany says, I've never run into tumescence in one, but I read/write specifically LGBTQ plus ones, so I know what the straight... So who knows what the straights are up to? I certainly don't know what they're doing in the trashy romance novel. Let's see. Well, okay. That's not true. I know of some of the things that they're up to secondhand, because again, it's just not my category of literature. And that's okay. Everyone gets to have their own preferences for things like literature and movies and whatnot. Like, for instance, Bent is objectively wrong about how good the movie Tremors is. But I don't think that makes him a bad person.
That's a false statement.
No, it's true. Bent actually thinks that the movie Tremors is not very good.
It's okay.
Yeah, see? That's not very good.
It's not a perfect movie, which is a claim that I have disagreed with.
Roshina Lipstick Equiskeller for $4.99 says, I learned tumescence from Principal Skinner. Nice. The Simpsons. What can't you learn from The Simpsons? And if you can't learn it from The Simpsons, is it really worth learning? Rail Gattibella for $2 says, I don't think I've read tumescence in my furry smut. Alright. Well, now we are learning a lot about the Dapper Dinosaur audience and what they read.
have to be in order to say that in the ark? Now that'll preach, okay? There's a sermon in there somewhere. Somebody ought to find that one, okay?
Yeah, okay, whatever. God said come rather than go into the ark because he was in the ark. Okay, cool. We're going to end this poll because we have well more than half the people who voted, which means I assume everyone who wants to vote voted. So let's see. Is the Hovind theory dumber than pre-Yiddish? Yes, 49%. Turtles, 34%, respectable. And no comes in at 15%. So yeah, the Hovind theory is dumber than pre-Yiddish, is going to be the consensus here. Silu says, what I can't learn from The Simpsons, I learned from Futurama. Nice. Ben, did you know that an entire mathematical theorem was derived and proven and published as a paper just for one gag in one episode of Futurama?
I did not know that, no.
Yeah. There's an episode where they're doing like some brain swapping with some fancy new thing the professor has invented, but you can't swap brains back with someone you've already swapped with before, right? And so they all get tangled up. And so the question is, how many additional people at a minimum do you need to unscramble everyone under all circumstances? And the answer is 2. And they actually show you on a blackboard one of the Harlem Globetrotters writing out the proof for the theorem. And that theorem appears in a paper written by one of the writers for that episode, who wrote the theorem because he had a degree in mathematics, and he wrote the theorem for that episode.
Very nice.
Yeah. So Futurama, in addition to being a funny sci-fi cartoon, is also like has some super big brain moments for like just cuz.
I don't mind going on a year-long cruise with a bunch of animals if the Lord's in there with me. The Lord said,
you know, I don't ever want to go on a year-long cruise. 6+ months were enough for me. But I have to say, I was with a bunch of animals every time I went on a cruise. So I don't know what the other option would be. A bunch of plants, a bunch of robots. Actually, you know what? A robot cruise might not be that bad. Just me on a boat with a bunch of robot servants. That could be okay. I could get used to that. I still don't want to, because, like, you ever feel like you've done enough of one thing in your life that you just never need to do it ever again?
Oh, yeah.
Being on the ocean is one of those things for me.
Yeah. Me too.
Were you going to sail around the world? Wasn't that one of your plans?
That was a long time ago.
Okay, fair enough.
Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast shalt thou take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of the beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female.
All right. First of all, we just hit the goal with 30 super chats of the teal level or higher. So I'm going to have to shove myself into my human suit again on next Tuesday, and put this guy on again. But Roshan Lipstick to Equus Keller for $4.99 says, I stick by my assertion that Ramat is the least smart non-flurf yek. Least smart Yeah, okay. I am not going to disagree. I'm just saying that the Hovind theory has made me less confident in that claim. I think I do still think that Ramat is dumber. But, like, this is... Kent is giving him a run for his money in this particular video.
Now, there's always been some interesting questions about this verse, because what was clean and unclean was not really revealed until Moses.
What? Are you saying there's some kind of contradiction in the story, Kent? Oh my goodness.
In about 1,000 years after this flood.
Anachronisms in the Bible. One of many. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $4.99 says, I'm getting really tired of hearing Ken say the word come. I did not set out to make this like the dirty episode of Kent with Ben. That was not my goal. I just want to put that out there, right? That is a thing that just kind of happened organically. So yeah. I blame all of you out there in YouTube land. I also don't really mind.
At least that's when Moses wrote the book of Leviticus and said certain animals are clean, it has to have a split hoof and chew the cud and all that kind of stuff. Apparently, it was always common knowledge what was clean and unclean, because Noah apparently knew. Maybe this is something God told to Adam, but it simply wasn't recorded in the Bible until this time, until...
Okay, but the thing is that we know from archaeology that, like, there was no widespread adoption of these food taboos in any place until well after the setting of the Exodus, right? Hundreds of years. And that these food taboos and their observance spread slowly, specifically in Canaan, right? So all of the historical and archaeological evidence says that Kent is wrong about that. But what Kent is doing is he's coming up with a fan theory to fix a hole in the canon that he likes, right? It's like when people try to come up with like some weird fan theory about, hey, how come Spock having a brother and an adopted or a half brother and an adopted sister never came up anywhere in any of the movies or the TV shows until like Star Trek V and Discovery? And the answer is because he didn't have those things beforehand, right? Like, he just didn't. Those were retcons. And yeah, they cause holes in the continuity. And if you're a big, like, super fan, you might want to fix that continuity. Right? And there are things like that in all sorts of different fandoms, right? I don't care what thing you're a fan of. If you look hard enough, you're going to find a discontinuity that you can try to plug up. And that's what Kent is doing. He is just making stuff up because fundamentally, there are aspects about his favorite book that just don't line up. And here's the thing, right? Most of Christian history, Christian like scholars and theologians and whatnot, have noticed that it doesn't always line up. That's why at one point a very popular genre of Christian literature was the harmony gospel, where you were just like, look, the gospels don't line up perfectly, so I'm going to write out my version of what I think the most likely events are, taking from all four gospels and creating a coherent narrative. And some of them were a little out there with like multiple feeding of the 5,000 events and whatnot. And some of them were like, yeah, there's a contradiction here, and here's my solution as to what the actual order of events probably was. But, like, the idea that the Bible just doesn't have any contradictions is actually a fairly new one. Not a very old idea in Christianity. And it's become very popular in certain aspects of, like, especially Protestant Christianity. But, like, it's pretty new to Christianity, the idea that the histories represented in the Bible have to be completely free of error. Let's see. Got a few super chats here. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $4.99 says, less than al dente Matthew. Okay, hold on. I gotta compose myself. Less than al dente Matthew is basically Kent if he lacked charisma. Oof, yeah. Roach and Lipstick to Equiskeller for $4.99 says, why did God put unclean animals in the Garden of Eden? So one thing is, like, people get the idea that unclean animals in the Bible were seen by people who were, aware of and observant of the Torah as, like, disgusting creatures or something, and that was true for some of them, like mostly pigs. But, like, the general idea isn't supposed to be that anything that's unclean is thereby, like, horrible and shouldn't exist, right? Like, Israelites and Jews have always used things like horses and donkeys, right? Those aren't clean. But, like, so what? They still use them for plowing fields, riding, and things like that. They just didn't eat them. Similarly, Jews in the Arabian Peninsula had camels for transport, as beasts of burden, for riding, things like that, right? The Jews have always kept cats and dogs as pets. Those aren't clean. So the idea behind clean and unclean is, like, for eating. And there are some exceptions, like pigs, which are, like, just generally seen as kind of gross, dirty animals, because, well, captive pigs are kind of gross and dirty. I mean, they're not wrong about that. But, like, generally, an animal not being a clean animal doesn't really mean that it's, like, of lower status overall. You're just not supposed to eat it, right? And if you think about it, most people have ideas like that, right? Like, most Americans think that the idea of eating a horse is, like, weird and gross, whereas, say, French people don't have that idea. But that doesn't mean that Americans think of horses as an animal are weird and gross, right? Similarly with cats and dogs, right? Most Americans aren't okay with eating cats and dogs, but that doesn't make them think that cats and dogs are thereby just gross. So there's a difference between, like, a food taboo and just thinking of an animal as, like, being, like, disgusting or low status or worthless overall. So that is my answer to that question. All right, let's get a little bit more Kent in, and we're going to start wrapping things up.
Leviticus, we don't know. But this is a question of, how did Noah know what's clean and unclean? It just may have been common knowledge. Why did he take 7 of some? Well, there have been...
I'm going to go ahead and say because the narrative then has him sacrificing animals immediately after getting off the ark. And the author of the Noah's Flood story realized that if there weren't an abundance of clean animals for sacrifice as well as for livestock, then there just wouldn't be any. Whereas that did not seem as pressing a problem for the unclean animals. So, there you go.
A lot of speculation on this. The Bible does not tell us, okay? But let me give you some of the...
Vadim Radchenko, we're just going to end here. Well, I'll let him finish the sentence.
The theories of why he may have taken 7. After the flood, of course, they're going to have something for sacrifice.
Yep, okay. I'm going to call that as a confirmed prediction. Take a drink. All right, so Vadim Radchenko says, wasn't it for eating and sacrifices? Here's the thing, those aren't really entirely different, because what was done with the meat from sacrifices? It was eaten. Yeah, so, like, if you were to bring, say, an animal to the temple in Jerusalem in, like, in the period from Josiah on, and you brought that animal in and you sacrificed it, you were basically having a barbecue, right? Yeah, the priests would come and they would take the animal and they would slaughter it and they would put it on the big altar full of fire and coals and whatnot. And then the priests and Levites would take a portion of that as their meal, basically, for the day. But the rest of it would go to you to distribute to, like, your family, your slaves, your servants, whatever. So that's what's done with that stuff. Now, there's certain parts of the animal that are just completely consumed by fire and given to God. But for the most part, that meat is just for you to eat now. Once, the priests and the Levites get their share. So those aren't really separate functions, basically. Sorry, Fearmonger says, have you seen the fundies defend Old Testament laws like they made any sense? I've heard them imply pork was a death sentence, ignoring all the cultures that enjoyed nice pork. Yeah. So like, this kind of comes out of like, sort of like the middle of the modern period, where there's this idea that maybe the laws in the Torah were like practical in every instance instead of just being like cultural identity markers, which is what the pig taboo is. And so they connected it to what was common among undercooked pork at the time, which was trichinella. Now, trichinella is still a concern, but like most modern pig populations that are kept for pork production in like at least the United States have vanishingly low rates of trichinosis. And so while I'm not recommending that you eat raw pork, you probably won't get trichinosis from it if you do, at least in the United States. But it also turns out that, yeah, people in the ancient past just knew how to cook pork. And also, their pork was not necessarily full of trichinella, so it's unclear. But yeah, I've heard that idea. It's generally rejected by biblical scholars. Russian lipstick Equus Keller for $4.99 says, people are expecting a mention of Sandra, so here it is without comment. Okay, well now Sandra has been mentioned. Used to work for someone named Sandra. She was a pretty good boss. Not perfect, pretty good. Good enough that I worked for her twice, and quit in the intervening period where she wasn't the boss. So, there is that. Let's see. Vadim Marchenko says, do you recall which book specifies the procedure? Deuteronomy? I don't. I would have to look that up. That would be something I would look up. Sorry. All right. Well, we have reached, we've been streaming for 2 hours, a bit over 2 hours. We have exceeded the super chat goal, so thank you very much. We did not get Ben free pizza. We only got, we got a little bit past halfway there, but couldn't quite stick the landing. So, Bent, do you have anything coming up that you want to tell people about?
No, I don't.
Okay. Let's see what's coming up on this channel. So, on Thursday, we are doing it's one of the films. It is the Frank Turek supercut. So, Frank Turek is Clueless, the movie. I think that's something like 4 hours long. So, like, if you're going to be there for the premiere, bring a snack, bring some drinks. It's going to be a long one. Then on Friday, over on Top Hats Off, my other channel, check it out. We're going to be doing Star Trek Lexington. It is a real... I mean, look, the last episode we did was a blast. I had so much fun with that. I think the audience did too. Check that out. Just, come hang out with us. It's going to be me, Chesh, Jordan from Reason to Doubt, Thierry Rana, Zeralon, who are both regulars in chat. Craig from FTFE is another main character. Necro is another person who's often in chat. Also sometimes as Zarna Rankar. Like, that is the cast. I'm the GM. We have a bunch of, fun Star Trek shenanigans. Last time, Chesh's character and Jordan's character, Dr. Tregan and Captain Hawk, maybe started a little bit of a romance subplot going. Who knows where that's going to go? I don't know. They definitely took a shower together. Yeah. I mean, Dr. Tregan definitely needed a shower because she was covered in Selot blood. But, which I guess makes it kind of like the shower scene where, what is it? Neil Breen's coming home from the hospital, and like all you see is like his feet and the actress who's playing his wife's feet, and then there's just like fake blood running down the drain. The entire weird scene. Neil Breen is a gem, and we need to protect that man so that he can make as many absurd movies as possible. If you don't know who Neil Breen is, you should look him up. He is a filmmaker. He's a
true artist.
Yes. Anyway, so that is Friday. Saturday, we're going to be back, hopefully with both Dr. Kip and Vishanti for more of Bodhi Hodge, just saying the dumbest things about Genesis, specifically the Tower of Babel story. And then, let's see, next Tuesday should be Matt with Maddie. I have to double check with Maddie, but I mean, she almost never says, no, that's not going to work for me. So I am fully expecting a Matt with Maddie. And then last but not least, if you're interested, we are going to be watching 5 episodes of Power Rangers Megaforce over on my Discord channel in voice chat, and we're going to be watching those on 1.25 speed, and that will be in just a few minutes after we close up this. So I think that covers it. Everyone, I hope you have a very safe rest of your week. If you are in any of the areas with fires, please keep your phones on so that you know if there's any evacuation orders or warnings or anything like that. And I hope to see all of you on Thursday. I know what day of the week things happen on. Hope to see you all on Thursday. Bye, everybody.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Hovind, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Eleron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, Sphincter of Doom, Wallace, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.